Chapter 51. The Memory Bridge. The dream clung to me even after waking, as if the night itself refused to let me go. I stood in an endless field, red leaves spiraling down from a sky without a sun. Gran was there, solid, luminous, a presence that felt more real than any memory. She didn't speak, not at first. She only lifted her hand and pointed beyond the trees, where two horizons bled into each other, Willow Ridge and Hollowshade twined together in a seam of light. A bridge that wasn't built of wood or stone, but of memory itself. I knew then what she wanted me to understand. Words wouldn't be enough. Paper and ink couldn't carry what needed to cross. It had to be lived, breathed, bled. I jolted awake with the taste of earth and iron on my tongue, my pulse racing. The hollow still stank of rot, the gray roots sagging like veins drained of blood. Ethan stirred beside me, his face shadowed by the dying glow of our lantern. I whispered what Gran had shown me, and though confusion flickered across his features, he didn't question. He had stopped doubting the impossible long ago. We returned to the altar together. The broken stone surface looked almost skeletal, carved by time and sorrow. From my satchel, I drew out the binding stone we had carried all this way, the one link that had not abandoned us. Its weight pressed against my palm as if it were alive, as if it carried centuries of voices waiting to be heard. The ritual rose unbidden, like words I had always known but had never dared to say. I pressed the stone against the shattered altar and closed my eyes. My voice trembled at first, but steadied as I spoke the names etched in my heart. Marietta, Leora, Gran. Each syllable rang through the hollow, weaving into the wind. With every name, the stone warmed, its surface pulsing like a quiet heartbeat. Leora's body stirred in the shadows. Her pale face lifted, hollow eyes searching as though the sound of her name was the only thread tying her to the world. I can feel it, she whispered, her lips trembling. The roots, they remember you. The bark beneath our feet shivered as if trying to rise from its sickness. For a moment, hope cracked through the silence, the withered roots shifting, twitching toward life. Ethan placed his hand over mine on the stone, his voice low but steady. Keep going, Ray, don't stop now. The glow deepened, spilling out of the stone and threading along the altar's fractures. The sick bark lit faintly, a ripple of red searing through gray like the first spark of dawn. My chest tightened, not with fear but with awe. For the first time in Hollowshade, the forest felt as though it was listening. But the moment was fragile, trembling like a candle flame in a storm. The air changed, sharp, electric. A cold ripple ran through me, and before I could name it, the sound came. A gunshot. The crack of it split the hollow in two, louder than thunder, sharper than glass shattering. The binding stone jolted in my hand, the glow faltering as though pierced by the bullet itself. I gasped and instinctively clutched the fragments tighter against the altar. Ethan spun, his body already angled toward the tree line, protective and sharp as a blade. His hand went to his weapon, eyes narrowing. But the light from the altar cast only silhouettes against the skeletal trees. A figure stood there, cloaked in shadow, unmoving yet suffocatingly present. The binding stone screamed. That's the only way I can describe it. The vibration piercing through bone and marrow, the soundless shriek of something alive being torn apart. Then it fractured. Splinters of light exploded outward, searing the altar and scattering like shards of falling stars. I cried out, trying to hold onto even one piece, but the stone dissolved in my hands, leaving only heat and ash pressed into my skin. The glow across the roots sputtered, then dimmed, retreating as though swallowed whole. The hollow plunged into silence, heavier than death. Leora collapsed, her body convulsing once before going utterly still. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. The memory bridge had been severed before it could form, the last lifeline yanked away. I staggered backward, heart tearing itself raw inside my chest. No, 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 no. My voice cracked, the words broken things. Ethan caught my arm before I hit the ground, his grip steady even as his own face burned with fury. The figure at the tree line stepped forward at last, and though the shadows clung to them, one thing was clear. Their arrival had not been an accident. They had come to destroy what we carried, and they had succeeded. The hollow was no longer waiting. It was dying. Chapter 52, The Shadow Keeper. The name came like an echo through the hollow. Elijah Moore. A historian once, a keeper of records, now only a man hollowed by grief. He stepped forward, rifle heavy in his hands, his face carved by years of sorrow. His voice cracked with fury. "You don't understand what you're playing with," he growled. "That tree it doesn't give. It takes, always has." Ethan's body shifted instantly, moving in front of me, shoulders squared. His voice was iron. "You fired at us." Elijah's eyes burned. "I saved this town once," he spat. 30 years ago, I watched it bleed because someone thought they could tame the forest. Now you're here to finish what they started." The air between us was sharp, filled with the scent of ash and broken earth. I stepped forward, the ache in my ribs biting, but my voice steady. "The forest isn't your enemy," I said softly. "It's your mirror. You hate it because it shows you what you fear most, yourself." His hands shook against the rifle. His breath came ragged. "My daughter," Elijah whispered. "She vanished into those trees. She was a keeper like you claim to be. And they," his voice broke, "they took her. You want to feed it more blood, I won't let you." The rifle rose again, trembling, its barrel glinting under the lantern light. Every heartbeat thundered. Ethan braced. And then, Leora's voice. Fragile, radiant, yet sharper than steel. "You didn't lose her to the forest, Elijah." Her pale figure stood, eyes glowing with memory. "You lost her to your fear." The hollow fell silent. Elijah's breath hitched. His arms sagged beneath the weight of grief and truth. The rifle lowered. And for the first time, the Shadow Keeper wept. Chapter 53, Rebinding. The shattered binding stone still lay in fragments around the broken altar, its glow extinguished, its promise severed. Dust from its ruins still lingered in the hollow air like smoke after a fire. My chest ached as if something essential had been torn from me. Leora's hand trembled against the roots, her breath shallow, her voice fraying. "It's gone! The tether is gone." But Ethan, ever steady, pressed his hand over mine. His palm was warm, grounding me in the chaos. His eyes searched mine with quiet urgency. "Not gone," he said. "Not yet. There has to be another way." He reached for my satchel, flipping through the pages of my worn journal, and then stopped. His expression softened with recognition. "Ray, the flower." My heart lurched. I had almost forgotten it. The crimson bloom the Willow Ridge tree had given me, the one I'd pressed carefully between 2 pages as if instinct told me to preserve it. With shaking fingers, I pulled it free. Even after all this time, the petals glowed faintly with a pulse of warmth, as though carrying within them the memory of the first covenant, the first bridge. When I held it up, the light spread softly across Ethan's face, gilding him in red-gold fire. Leora's gaze locked on it, wide with wonder and recognition. "Yes," she breathed, as if exhaling the weight of centuries. "That is older than any stone, any ritual you've known. It carries the promise of renewal unbroken." She rose, weak but determined, and beckoned us deeper into the tangled roots. We followed her into the earth's marrow, where the hollow widened into a chamber long hidden. The air was thick with age, heavy with moss and silence. At its center stood another altar, smaller, simpler, untouched by human hands for generations. The stone was cracked with time, overgrown with vines, but its surface thrummed faintly as though waiting. "This one predates the curse," Leora whispered, reverent. "It belongs to no keeper, no family, no bloodline. It is neutral, pure. If anything can bind memory again, it is here." My hands shook as I approached. Every step echoed through me like a drumbeat. I thought of Gran's dream, of Marietta's prayers, of all the lives that had bent and broken under the weight of this curse. I thought of Ethan, his faith steady even when mine wavered. My throat tightened. "If this fails..." Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady but low, carrying a warmth that steadied my fear. "Then we try again, and again, until it works. But Ray, this won't fail. You're not alone this time." The flower trembled in my palm as if alive, sensing the nearness of its resting place. Slowly, I set it upon the center of the altar. The moment it touched stone, the chamber shifted. The air grew still. Even the faint drip of water from above stopped mid-fall, suspended. The roots above us quivered, listening. The silence was thick, profound, absolute, as though the forest itself had taken a single, unified breath. Then the bloom flared. Light erupted outward, not in a single flash but in spirals, curling like flame made of memory. It climbed the walls, raced into the veins of the roots, spilled upward into the bark above us. The chamber burned with living fire, but it did not sear, it healed. The glow poured into Leora. She gasped, stumbling as her body bowed under the weight of it. Ethan caught her, but she waved him off, eyes blazing with something unearthly. Her frail form trembled, yet she stood straighter than I had ever seen her, shoulders squared, face radiant. The light made her appear both young and ancient all at once. I dropped to my knees beside her, fear clawing through my chest. "Leora, stop, it's too much, Yul." She seized my hand, gripping it with surprising strength. Her gaze found mine, fierce and burning. "No, Ray, you brought the memory here. You carried it when the stone failed, when the world forgot. You were the bridge." Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. "I only held it. You kept it alive." Tears blurred my vision, but I clung to her hand as though it were the last tether between us and the world. "I don't want to lose you," I whispered. My voice cracked against the weight of it. Her thumb brushed across my knuckles, gentle, fading. "You won't. I am in the roots now, in the leaves, in the memory." Her voice wavered, but her eyes shone with peace. "Do not grieve. This is what I was meant to be." Her body collapsed then, fragile as paper. But her eyes, oh, her eyes, burned one last time, brighter than fire, brighter than the dawn. And then, at last, they closed. The light did not fade. Instead, it spread. Outside, we heard it, the long, silent stirring of the forest. Branches shuddered like bones waking from sleep. Leaves cascaded gently from above, crimson and gold, showering the hollow like blessings. The ground trembled softly, not with violence but with release, as though Hollowshade exhaled for the first time in years. Ethan wrapped an arm around my shoulders as we stood together, staring up at the rain of red and gold. It did not feel like an ending. It felt like a welcome. Like something long lost had finally come home. Chapter 54. The Town Wakes. The days after the rebinding were slow, gentle, like dawn unfurling over a long, quiet night. Hollowshade felt alive again. Not just alive, but breathing, awake, remembering itself. The streets, once empty and silent, began to hum with small life. Children laughed as they ran between shop fronts, their voices ringing like wind chimes through the alleys. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and wet earth, rich and earthy, the scent of a world being remembered. Shop signs, faded and warped from years of neglect, were repainted with careful hands. Bright colors returned, reds, blues, and golds that shimmered in the sun. Windows sparkled where dust had gathered for decades, and flowers bloomed in pots along the edges of the streets, as if the earth itself had remembered joy. The fog, thick and unyielding for so long, lifted slowly, curling upward and vanishing like a dream slipping from a dreamer's eyes. Hollowshade no longer hid in shadow. It stepped, at last, into morning. Leora remained unconscious, her body still tethered to the altar's memory, but stable. She rested in the old inn at the edge of town, wrapped in blankets stitched with forest symbols, runic patterns of roots and leaves that whispered of protection. Her chest rose and fell in a slow, even rhythm, and though her lips were pale, there was a faint warmth in her hands that made me believe she was listening, that she was aware even in stillness. Elijah returned, too. He moved quietly at first, almost as if afraid to disrupt the fragile peace. But he was changed, softer, tempered by the weight of what had been broken and what had been restored. He knelt beside the altar and ran his hands along the old stones, murmuring blessings. "We'll rebuild this," he promised, voice low. "We'll plan again. We'll remember." There was a reverence in him now, a humility that had been absent before. Ethan and I stayed longer in Hollowshade than we had intended. Time seemed suspended here, measured not in hours, but in the soft turning of leaves and the slow growth of light. I spent mornings teaching art classes in the library, guiding children's hands over sketchpads, showing them how to capture the world as it returned. Their laughter was a song I carried with me into the evening. Ethan worked with patient precision on the carvings along the town's old walls, breathing life into forgotten stone. He traced the lines of faces and animals that had long been dulled by age, and as he worked, the stone seemed to shimmer faintly beneath his fingers. Even as the town healed, I felt the forest's presence again, not like before, sharp and threatening, but softer, deliberate, a voice woven into the rustle of leaves. Its call was quiet, an invitation rather than a warning. "There's another," I murmured one evening, my voice almost lost among the chorus of crickets and the soft blink of fireflies above us. I held the delicate glow of the lantern between my hands, casting golden specks across Ethan's face. He nodded, his jaw tight with understanding. "There always is," he said, his tone gentle, resolute. His hand found mine, and the warmth of it anchored me more firmly than any tether or stone ever could. We sat beneath the reborn pine at the edge of the forest, the bark faintly glowing where the memory of Leora and the binding stone lingered. Fireflies danced in the branches above, like tiny sparks of memory floating through the night. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying the scent of moss and earth, of life returning, of stories not yet finished. Some stories, I realized, do not end. They linger, echoing through the spaces between hearts, in the branches of trees, in the stones of streets long forgotten. They move alive, waiting for the next hands to shape them, the next hearts to hold them. And as Ethan squeezed my hand, I knew we were ready for the echoes to come. The forest, the town, and even Leora herself, somewhere beneath the blankets stitched with runes, had more to tell. Some stories, I thought, smiling as the fireflies blinked like tiny stars around us, do not end. They carry on. They echo. Chapter 55, The Red Trail. We left Hollowshade behind, and with every step red petals seemed to rise from the ground as if the forest itself were breathing farewells into the wind. They drifted in our wake, catching sunlight in delicate glimmers, each petal a thank you, a promise, a memory stitched into the air. I reached down instinctively, brushing my fingers over one that had landed on the dusty path. Its softness was like a whisper from the town, from the forest, from everything we had saved. The road ahead stretched long and uncertain, winding like a ribbon into hills and valleys we had never seen. There was no certainty about where the next letter might come from, or even if it would. Yet the pull persisted, subtle but unrelenting, as though an invisible thread had been stitched directly into my soul. The forests were speaking again, but more slowly now, deliberately, each rustle of leaves carrying weight, each sigh of wind a message. And it was not just me they sought. Ethan felt it too, his hand tightening around mine with each step, a silent acknowledgement of the unseen path before us. I glanced at him as we crested the ridge, the valley below bathed in golden light. Dust motes swirled around us, catching the sun like sparks, and for a moment the world held its breath. I hesitated, feeling the weight of everything behind us, the towns we'd saved, the lives we'd touched, the memory of Leora lying fragile but alive, and then asked softly, almost shyly, "Do you regret it?" He looked at me, his eyes reflecting the amber glow of the late afternoon. Coming back from the dead, facing a cursed town, planting a magic tree. His voice was steady, but there was a warmth there, a quiet reverence for everything we had endured. "Yeah," I admitted, smiling despite myself. Ethan leaned over, brushing his lips against my temple in a gentle, grounding kiss. "Not even once," he said. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of every battle, every shadow, every secret the forest had shared with us. I laughed then, a sound that rang through the trees, unburdened for the first time in years. The laughter clung to the air, mingling with the rustle of leaves, the whisper of the wind, and the soft echo of petals swirling around our feet. For a moment the past, the sorrow, the fear, the weight of Hollowshade, felt distant, like a shadow fading at sunrise. As we continued down the ridge, the trees ahead began to thin, parting as if inviting us forward. A soft breeze scattered red leaves across the path, twirling them like dancers in the golden light. They fell not as warnings, but as gestures of welcome, guiding us forward with a quiet insistence. The path ahead seemed to pulse with anticipation, each step carrying a promise we could not yet name. The air smelled of earth and rain, of growth and beginnings, and the sun filtered through the branches in streaks that painted the ground in molten gold. It felt alive, like the forest was holding its breath for us, waiting for the next chapter to begin. I squeezed Ethan's hand, feeling the strength in his fingers, the unspoken agreement that we would follow wherever this red trail led. Together. And as the last of the petals settled at our feet, I understood that this journey, this thread through forests, towns, and memory, was far from over. The red trail ahead was not a warning. It was an invitation. A promise. A beginning.